Matthew, thanks so much for joining us inside the Ice House.
Thanks for having me, Lance. It's a pleasure to be here.
So this conversation and the desire to have it spawned from the unveiling of the Klarna card and Visa's partnership with Klarna announced at Money 2020 Europe in June. Now, Visa's flexible credential technology is at the heart of this collaboration. So for listeners not deep in payments tech, what first makes flexible credential so different from a traditional debit or a traditional credit card?
Thanks, Lance. That's a very good question. And indeed, we're very excited about that Klarna partnership. The Visa Flexible Credential is what we call our future platform. It's really enabling a single card to act in multiple ways. And historically, you used to have one card, one use case. You mentioned debit and credit. These were very much siloed into one construct. And now one single credential can act very much as the consumer ultimately wants that card to act, and by tapping into multiple funding source or payment options. So the same card can be a debit transaction, a credit transaction, a pay later transactions, and we can discuss more use cases.
And I would assume that's sort of what makes it, right, such a game changer for consumers who really want control and choice in how they pay, that ability for one card to do really everything, you would say.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think at the heart of it is the fact that consumers all the time want to express choice, but the truth is that they want to express that choice in a very digitally native way. And historically, that choice, you had to express it in an analog way. You have to have multiple cards inside of your wallet, and you would do that choice, pre-transactions. Now you can do that choice pre-transaction. You could do that choice post-transactions as well. And you can do that obviously very digitally natively inside, in this case, of the Klarna environment.
So Klarna has built a reputation on giving consumers flexibility, right? From paying now to spreading payments over time. Visa's network already powers more than 150 million merchant locations worldwide. How does bringing these two strengths together unlock opportunities for consumers that maybe neither company may have previously had?
I think it's the beauty of it is that you can build on a platform that then gives you access to 150 million merchants, rather than having to build your own network of merchants, and then obviously limits then the choice and the expression of that choice for the end consumer. And so I think the choice of Klarna to build on the Visa network enables them to focus on what do I want to give to my consumer, e.g. the flexibility that you talked about. In this case, they have a debit card that's connected to a buy now, pay later option. You can pay in full or you can pay later, but then not to worry about where does that choice can be expressed, at which types of purchase, at which type of merchant. And so I think that's really the power of it. And we also know that, consumers express and shop across these 150 million, merchant endpoints. And so enabling them to have the same value proposition portable across multiple merchant types, but also geographies, right? Because the cross-border is also a very interesting use case as and when people travel. And typically, you tend to have bigger purchases where you need that flexibility of payment options on bigger items. Travel is a great example. You tend to save money for these one-time bigger travel moments, and this also comes with bigger purchases where flexibility like pay later or paying for that Klarna offers applies really well.
So a lot of people, I think, might hear this one card for all your payment needs and immediately think about security and think about trust. How is Visa making sure that as the payment gets more flexible and the experience gets more flexible, it also remains as secure, if not more secure, than traditional methods?
I think I would say that in this case, it's built on top of the existing network and standards. And so the transactions are equally identifiable in the network. The Visa, without going into too much details, we obviously have the right messagings that's following the transaction. And so I think security remains paramount, but maintained because it's built on top of existing standards. I would also say that in addition to that, we created additional visibility across the network so that the merchant in this case could understand also what type of transaction was actually being used at their point of sale. And so this is also part of what the platform had to do, is to create and to ensure that extra visibility for the receiving end of the transaction, in this case, the merchant.
So I want to look down the road just a few years. When you think about just the combination of AI, flexible credentials, and these kinds of integrated payment tools, what does the everyday checkout experience look like in your mind, in your foreshadowing for the average consumer, whether they're where I am in New York or whether they're where you are in Switzerland?
So I think that's the big topic you're opening up here when we think about the future of checkout. I would say there are two probably areas where we could spend a bit of time when we bring the two pieces together. First of all, on the expression of that choice, I think this is where you could already have generative intelligence that supports you as a consumer. You know, the choice of, I want to pay this with a debit card or a debit account, and I want to pay this with a pay later or a paid for instance. This choice can be supported by generative intelligence and AI. And so I think we see that the way that expression is being today, we're thinking about a toggle inside of a digital environment. Here, your personal agent will be able to help you make this choice and potentially do some of this choice on your behalf, understanding your typical patterns, your budget, your available spend or available budget. So that's one aspect of it. Now, when it comes to the actual checkout moment itself, that's the whole exciting topic that we've introduced with Visa Intelligent Commerce, where we do really believe that we are the cusp of that big next generation of what commerce would look like, and primarily powered by AI agent that act as your personal shopping assistant and really take some of that cognitive, load of shopping, browsing, discovering. So that whole discovery to buy journey, which can be quite complex, as you need to do that now across 150 million merchants, but then also can take care on your behalf of the checkout moment. We do say that if there is only, a great discovery to buy experience, it's not really commerce. It's only window shopping. And so having these agents being powered to act on your behalf all the way to payment is really what Visa Intelligent Commerce is about. And now that's beautiful, because if that agent is powered to act on your behalf, but also as a flexible credential, then of course it can express that choice that we talked about at the time of checkout. And so it will share that flexible credential to the merchant, but also will have decided which types of funding source of payment option to be used for that specific transaction.
So you mentioned Visa Intelligent Commerce, and I want to now pivot our conversation to that.
That'd be great.
So last spring, this was introduced. It's been described as a new standard for this next era where AI can browse, select purchase, even manage transactions for the consumer. So for just someone hearing this for the first time, what exactly does AI commerce mean in practice, and why is Visa betting so strongly on it?
So I mentioned it briefly, but AI commerce in practice means that an AI agent acts on your behalf to execute your shopping task. And these tasks can be complex, multi-choice, multi-item type purchases, or more recurring chores, simplified tasks on your behalf. So it's really someone who acts on your behalf, shop, discover, identify the items, put them into a shopping cart, and then actually execute the payment on your behalf. That's what agentic commerce is about. Now, your second question, remind me.
Why is Visa betting so strongly on AI commerce and its future?
So a couple of things. We take that view that this is we just at the beginning of a transformative phase, the same way e-commerce and then mobile was in the last 20 years. We think that generative AI has the power to completely transform the discovery to buy journey. And if you look at the last 30 years and the first two phases of e-commerce first, or internet, and then mobile commerce, the one thing that hasn't really been disrupted or changed is that discovery to buy journey. You as a user doing it from web initially, now on your mobile, still need to go on different platforms, identify the items that you want, compare items, all the way to choosing these items and then executing the checkout moments and executing the transaction. We think that the power of Gen AIs and Gen AI platforms are already changing the discovery to buy journey fundamentally. And so we think that this is the direction of travel, and we're going to see more of that. If you look at some of the data, there is more than 1 billion users across these Gen AI consumer platforms. And that's only over the last 30 months. And so it's a very short span of time, yet we see a tremendous amount of usage. The other thing that we do observe is that the type of prompt being used on this platform is also moving to commerce fundamentally. And there is a disproportionate increase over the last 6 months, actually, a strong acceleration towards commerce, meaning that the actual prompt are asking these Gen AI, these agents, to help them to help the user in their shopping tasks by better understanding, by comparing products, by helping them select products. And then we see the same traffic moving to the actual commerce websites to finalize the payment. And so these are the signs that for us are the precursor of a transformative phase in Gen AI.
And so a lot of listeners might think that AI, or might think of AI as something, happening mostly behind the scenes. But how do you see Visa Intelligent Commerce just changing the way someone experiences shopping in their daily life, whether it's booking a trip, restocking their fridge on a daily basis or weekly basis, or finding that perfect gift? How is this really going to just transform the user shopping experience?
Yeah, so I think it's a good question, because we need to bring that a little bit into the consumer truth, right? What would they experience tomorrow? I think today, the billion users that I talked about and the prompt that they are using that is linked towards commerce looks like, please help me understand or help me book a trip to Miami. And the Gen AI, the agent, will be able to compare trips on your behalf and then come back to you with a selection. And then you will need to move into that website in order to complete that transaction. You need to find or connect yourself to that website ultimately. Tomorrow, and what we are piloting now, because the APIs that we've introduced are live, and we have these Gen AI platforms that are coding to them. Tomorrow, the same agent will be able to capture your payment instruction and then finalize that selection and finalize the shopping experience on your behalf. So you will not only have someone who helps you discover, compare, and browse the large inventory that's available out there, but you'll have an agent that will be able to transact on your behalf and execute on your behalf. And it will look like a relatively simple prompt. I need to book a trip to Miami. And then probably 1 or 2 iterations based on selection that your agent is coming back with. And once you confirm, which we capture as what we call a payment instruction, once you confirm, then the agent has your blessing and the level of security that comes with the Visa Intelligent Commerce platform to execute this transaction on your behalf. And this execution happens in the background across multiple websites, multiple merchants, one of the 150 million that we have. Can happen all simultaneously or can happen asynchronously, because the agent needs to find the right time to make the right booking on your behalf. Flight seats not available for that plane necessarily at the exact time that you are making that call. And that's the beauty, is that a lot of commerce also has a time dimension that in this case, you don't need to be associated with as a user. This can happen in the background for the right price at the right time when the seats or the tickets for that show are available. And that's the beauty. The agent is always on, always working for you based on that instruction that you've given in the first place. So we see really an interesting lift and transformation of what the consumer experience would look like. We're very excited about it.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. So that's how AI commerce could improve the way we buy what's already out there. But just in your overall opinion, Do you think this AI commerce and the movement towards it could open up just entirely new categories of products and services that may not exist today, right? Could it allow, or could the ability to transact through AI unlock new opportunities for subscriptions, for bundles, or entirely new types of business models, right? Like, what can this do, not just for how the consumer currently buys, but for what is out there for the consumer to buy, for the consumer to do, in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years as this grows?
Yeah, I think we see already some of that. I think, and that's the other side of AI, right? AI is not just transforming commerce. To your point, it's transforming categories, and we see that. And so I think the types of product and services that the individual users will start buying will also be empowered by AI. The way that you can now be a coder on your own and can start building a business is a service that was not available before. And we see transaction on the network of a lot of people starting to use websites where, in this case, it's AI powered, and it's a new category on its own. You no longer buy a website provider or book to learn how to code. You actually buy a service that's AI powered that generates a website for you. And that's just one super simple examples, but there'll be new categories. One, I think we will also see interesting, test and learns on new business models where we think that the phase one is an agent that shops on your behalf, but there will be an equal response on the merchant side, where merchants will also start adopting agents to better interact with user and eventually to better interact with the agent of the user. And that's when I think you mentioned bundling or group buying. I think that's also where agent could start to see multiple signals that go into the same direction on both sides, on the consumer side and on the merchant side. And that could lead to interesting, agent to agent discussions. So we're quite excited. I think we need to go through use case, the ones that are probably more realistic, even there's still an ecosystem that needs to be put in place. But what we do see for sure is that the pace of change is clearly accelerated. And so it's not going to be years, but months until we can see first use cases, first implementation. And then, of course, there'll be quick reaction on both sides of the ecosystem. So interesting models should come up.
So, Matthew, as we wrap up our conversation, if we were to sit down again in 2030, even before then, let's say 2020, 2026, 2027, 2028, but if we were to sit down again in 2030, what do you hope we'd be discussing about Visa's role in shaping AI commerce and how it impacts the consumer as a whole?
I think we would have reached a point where this Visa Intelligent Commerce would have scaled. I think the platform itself will have continued to evolve. I think we would see a real application of agents, acting on behalf. I think this convergence that we talked about earlier around, multiple funding source options on the flexible credential, the credential side, so the payment type, combined with agentic will be a reality. And there is more, but I think on agentic, it will become much more normal for transactions to happen when they are agent powered. And we're going to be, if we're stretching to 27, already facing, new categories, new business models that are AI powered. But yeah, and I think it's also going to be a more, there'll be general availability, right? In the sense of multiple markets. It's not going to be a US only thing. We're going to see multiple realities. By 2027, I also expect, multiple market response. And so it's not just going to be a series of platform, but you're going to see the emergence of multi-agent type ecosystem where as a user, you'd be comfortable with potentially multiple agents supporting you in different types of tasks. The same way, we thought that maybe at some point we will end up having only a series of apps on our phones. And what we actually see on the user side is that you tend to be multi-app. And this complexity is something that you're happy to navigate with. So I imagine with what we see currently with multi-agent, having an agent more specialized in certain world, that we as a consumer will get comfortable working with multiple agents based on our needs.
Well, Matthew, it's incredible what Visa is doing with its flexible credential technology, as well as Visa Intelligent Commerce. And I thank you so much for joining us inside the Ice House.
Of course. Thanks for the time, Lance.